It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host. Appreciate you joining with us this morning. Thank you. You know, we're running across some dangerous territory here with the proliferation and the expansion of executive orders. And we're going to touch on that today, along with a couple of other topics. I also want to talk briefly this morning about the fact that our veterans are to be honored today. Today is the 11th, November 11th. And as a result, I want to start with the concept that we need to recognize the fact that our veterans have really sacrificed and put forth an enormous amount of effort to follow their heart, to follow their truest belief in our republic. Granted, the people in leadership may be misleading. They may be sending them in the wrong places, doing the wrong job. But their motives, their spirits were true. And so we owe them a debt of gratitude and our allegiance and our support for their efforts, because irrespective of how misguided the leadership may be that's directing their actions, these men and women put their lives on the line every day for what they believe is their American value. And, I think it's important that we give credit where it's due appropriately to those people that have sacrificed so much for us, not only in current and recent periods, but down through history. Americans have always stood up at the right moment to take control of a situation that they felt was, egregious. When we learned about the atrocities being committed in World War II and things like that, we always stepped up and did the right thing. Our nation has been very, very generous, not only with our treasure, but with our blood in reference to protecting and helping and saving and stepping in where needed, not only domestically for our own nation's benefit, but also for those people who live in foreign nations. And so when we look at things like World War II in Britain and France, we really stepped up to the plate to make sure that those countries were reinstated, if you will, back to their, and all of Europe. It wasn't just limited to those countries, but all of Europe. I think that, Americans, and I know a number of folks that after 9/11, they felt that it was their patriotic duty to step up to the plate and help defend our nation. And, of course, many of them are probably very disillusioned now with what's transpired since, but that doesn't take anything away from their efforts and the sacrifices that they've made. And I think we want to make sure that we're clear about that, and that when we have an opportunity to, we provide the appropriate congratulations to those veterans for, one, following their heart and their spirit and the true spirit of American exceptionalism, and two, for the sacrifices that they've made, not only to their families and to their communities, but also to themselves. We have a ton of veterans that are coming back from decades of war, all, in many cases damaged irreparably, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And, it's our obligation to make sure that we're supporting and taking care of those men in a way that is fitting for their efforts. So if you're a veteran out there, personally, I give you my thanks. I give you my support. And having a veteran in my own family, my son, as many of you know, is overseas, and I'm very appreciative of the effort and the honor and the dignity and the integrity that you've put into your work. Thank you. The 4 topics we're going to cover this morning are the executive order Snowstorm that is about to hit the United States of America. You know, our president is now that essentially the issue of his agenda is under threat, he is descending to essentially utilize executive orders where he cannot get his agenda pushed through Congress. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a dangerous place for us to be, and we should recognize it and understand exactly the depths of the depravity of this particular methodology of passing an agenda or passing an agenda on. You know, this president reminds me of a guy whose plane has been hit, and you know he is literally at this point scrambling to try to put the pieces back together to force through what, quite frankly, his holders and his supporters have paid him to do, which is bad enough that we even recognize it as that. But to go beyond and outside of Congress is completely unacceptable. You know, we have a constitution that declares how the system is supposed to operate. And so we should really make sure that we are following that, because otherwise, we may as well, we're descending into a third world country and a third world dictatorship at that. Our second topic is going to be Iran sanctions and how they've been lifted in advance of negotiations. Now, come on, folks. You know, you don't have to be, a highly trained executive merger and acquisition specialist to recognize that you don't give concessions to the people that you're negotiating with in advance of that negotiation. I mean, really, it's just it's horrific, because it shows you the level of ineptitude that is associated with this administration. You know, there's an article out there on Atlas Shrugs 2000, or Atlas Shrugs, I should say, by Pam Geller, or Geller. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce her name. And she's got a comment out there that I think pretty much sums it up. Sounds like Obama decided to enter the Persian nuclear bazaar to haggle with the masters of negotiation and has had his head handed to him. Bingo. You know, honestly, they are staunch negotiators. They are very, very skilled at it. And these guys, Kerry and Obama, are walking in there like lambs to the slaughter. The problem is that the decisions that they make don't just affect 315 million people here in the United States. They affect billions around the planet. And it's presumptuous to assume that John Kerry and Barack Obama have the fortitude, the capacity, the skill, the wisdom, the knowledge, the insight, and even the right motivations to negotiate this. I posted an article up this morning on our Facebook page about how the Saudis have, quote, paid Pakistan in advance for nuclear weapons, waiting for delivery because they have basically signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and theoretically, by taking possession of those weapons, they would violate that Non-Proliferation Treaty. So, skilled as they are, they basically have donated and paid literally hundreds of millions of dollars to Pakistan and purchased their weapons in advance and then just not accepted delivery, quote unquote. They already have the missile capability, by the way. That's been established for a decade or more. What they need now is the warheads. This is a dangerous game that we're playing here in the Middle East. And because of our tangled alliances, which George Washington, staunchly recommended, and our direct contravention of that, we're smack dab in the middle of it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is not a good place for America nor the world to be. Our third topic is Obamacare, unions, and capitalism. And we're going to talk a little bit about how Obamacare or President Obama, I should say, has designated that the unions are going to get their moment in the sun, if you will, as a payback for the issue of their support for him. Now, if you're following what's going on with that, the unions have been demanding that they get exemption from health care, Obamacare. And it looks like they're going to get it. I mean, they've pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into his campaign, and now they're calling their chip. This is, and meanwhile, by the way, there's a group, and this was an article in the New York Post, which I'll reference when we get to that section. There's a group of individuals who have put together a capitalist version of health care. And they're out of New York, by the way, which is interesting because that is the heart of anything other than capitalism. And the article is titled Meet Oscar. That's what they're calling this program. The startup that may revolutionize health insurance. And logically, they started with the premise that health insurance companies should relieve, not create headaches. Wow, what a concept. Imagine that. Utilizing capitalism to solve our problem. Interesting. What an amazing concept. God forbid we do that, because that would take power away from the state, quote unquote. Our fourth and final segment will be the Ministry of Propaganda's lack of credibility. There was an excellent article also in the New York Post, which, I'll be honest, I don't generally follow the New York Post all that much. It has a tendency in a lot of ways to be more of like a tabloid paper than it does to be a real newspaper. But there was an excellent article in there by Michael Goodwin, and we're going to cover that extensively because I got to tell you something. This guy really wrote one heck of an article about how the sycophantic Ministry of Propaganda is literally falling all over themselves as lapdogs to try to support and defend and protect and give cover to what everyone in the nation can clearly see is a series of boondoggles, if you will. Starting with not just health care, but also incorporating things like the issues of the IRS and NSA and all the rest of this stuff. So, all right, let's jump into our first topic. The issue of executive orders is heavy right now because what we're seeing is a president who has already stated to us, and so there's no denying the reality of his intent, that if Congress won't act, I'll act unilaterally to solve those problems. Now, that was a quote straight out of his own, and I apologize because I'm paraphrasing. I don't have that quote in front of me, but essentially his argument was this. If Congress won't move fast enough to employ the agenda that I have determined what America is, the direction America is going to head, I'm going to do it through executive order. And I got to tell you, that is a national example of bullying. It's completely and totally unacceptable. That is not the way our nation works. That is not the way our system of government works. That is not the intent of our founding fathers. That is nowhere in the Constitution. It is totally and completely against the Declaration of Independence and any of the ideas and concepts that were the foundation of our nation. He said at a Democratic fundraiser on Friday night in Miami, what we've seen over the last several years is a constant ratcheting up of partisanship that prevents us from moving forward on things I think most people would say aren't Democrat or Republican ideas. They're just good common sense American ideas, energy independence being one of them. Stop right there. First of all, this defies the concept of critical thinking. When you put a false assumption out there and you state it as an empirical fact, and then everything else is based on that false assumption. First of all, the partisanship that's out there is not as much related to the issue of the separation between Republican and Democrat as it is an attempt to stop an unwanted dramatic drive and a ratcheting up of socialistic, Marxist, and fascist tendencies that our government is taking. And those few voices in Congress who are actually disputing it shouldn't be looked at as if they are being partisan. They should look at it as if they are partisans. I disagree with the concept that the ratcheting up of partisanship has prevented us from moving forward. The truth of the matter is, Mr. Obama, we don't want your brand of forward. We don't want it. We disagree with it wholeheartedly. Yes, I get the fact that you have bribed your way via largesse of the Treasury into the hearts and minds of literally millions of Americans. But even those people are finding out that there's everything wrong with your agenda. Even those people are realizing just how dangerous your agenda is to their own pocketbook and to their ability to remain independent of government. The truth is that this administration is working dramatically to dramatically change the landscape, the regulatory landscape in this country via the EPA, and the Environmental Protection Agency is literally unleashing a snowstorm of paper. They are putting in place regulations which have zero constitutional grounds for existence. Remember that the Environmental Protection Agency is an extra constitutional agency to begin with. Now, look, I want clean air, and I want clean water, and I want protection of our environment just like everybody else. But sitting there and saying that we're going to demonize oil, gas, and coal as our energy sources when we don't truly have an alternative to that is insane. That's not a way to run a country. You know, this reminds me of the equivalent of saying, I'm quitting my job today, and your best friend looks at you and says, oh, well, okay, so you found a better job? No, I didn't. I'm just going to quit my job. Well, what do you mean you're quitting your job? Have you got a better job lined up? No, I don't. Well, what are you going to do for money? I don't know, but we'll worry about that then. Whoa, stop right there. You got a wife and kids and a house to support. You've got a family to feed. How are you going to deal with that? You see, the problem here is that what they're looking for is the true goal of this administration, and the agenda associated with this is not so much about saving the environment. Their goal is to drive up costs on energy, with the simple idea that by doing that, they are feeding their corporate partners in their corporatocracy and essentially stripping Americans, again, of the middle class, of their wealth. Remember, they're subsidizing the poor on their energy costs. You know, there's a million different programs out there for energy reduction and their costs associated with that. But the truth of the matter is that the real goal here is not so much to protect the environment. It's to punish America for being America. That's the goal, folks. And everything else is a bunch of marketing around it. They want higher taxes and they want higher costs on domestic oil and gas and coal. And they want to reduce coal's use as a means to create electricity, which, according to the president's own quote, under my plan, electric costs would necessarily skyrocket. Well, bear in mind, Mr. President, we can't afford any skyrocketing anything right now. We can't afford to feed our families. Oh, I get it. That falls right into your plan. Strip the middle class of every vestige of any ability to, one, be self-reliant and dependent or independent upon their own capabilities and wherewithal. And again, you add to the morass, you add to the volume of those who become dependent on government largesse, who then have no alternative but to remain in that position of forced, coerced slavery because they can't afford the basic necessities of heat and electric. And then meanwhile, you'll pay for it with taxpayer money, which is also being siphoned off, again, from whom? The middle class. So it creates a circle of dependency and a a self-evident. Well, let me put it to you this way: the idea is that, and this story's got an excellent comment on it, which I want to read to you, because the idea of this approach to energy and demonizing that which we know works and which, quite honestly, we don't already have an alternative to, is insane. Dan Kish, the senior vice president for the Institute of Energy Research, says, quote, "It's very apparent that the real intent is to make oil and gas more expensive in order to make the heavily subsidized, unreliable, and costly renewable energy programs that they are pushing more cost competitive." So, I ask you this. Where did we ever hear this before? Oh, that's right. We're embroiled in it right now. It's called Obamacare. We're going to fleece the folks who can afford it to pay for those who can't. And this is no different. We're going to fleece those industries that can, and the people thereby who benefit from them, to cover the costs of those which are not really viable. The guy goes on and says, and this is very interesting. Listen to this quote. "This is the Tonya Harding approach to energy. Break your opponent's kneecap if you can't win fair and square." Wow. That is an absolutely astounding analogy, and one which is absolutely accurate. They can't win on the legislative side, so they're going to do this by issuing executive orders. And I got to tell you, executive orders were never intended to create law. Constitutionally, that is a limitation preserved exclusively for Congress. The courts may not do it. The executive may not do it. No one may make law except Congress. And because Congress will not acquiesce, he's going to do an end run around them and utilize these executive orders in their place. Ladies and gentlemen, that is tyranny defined. It's always this flowery nonsense around it. You know, Obama recently said, making sure we're investing in the best schools so that our children can compete in this new global economy, rebuilding our infrastructure. How many times have we heard that sycophantic nonsense? And not just our energy infrastructure, our ports and our roads and our bridges and our air traffic control systems, so that we stay on the cutting edge, making sure we're investing in research development. We have a whole drawer full of good ideas, and some of them I can do on my own administratively. The heck you can. The heck you can. You have absolutely no right to act as some kind of a bananic republic dictator. This is a nation of law, and the rule of law is based upon and established in two documents. The Declaration of Independence, which clearly tells us that if you continue in this path, we will be forced to remove you from power. And the alternative document to that, which is the Constitution, which outlines what your power limits are. Your power limits are established, sir, and if you continue along this path of insanity, demanding that you be the sole and unilateral arbitrator of all things, then you are forcing this nation into a position where we will be forced to follow those principles and concepts outlined in the Declaration of Independence. You have become a usurper. The truth is, this is acting in a form of tyranny, and frankly, I've had enough of it. The Weekly Standard has an excellent article out there, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can find all of these in that first section where you see I think it's comment section, not comments, the show description section. I always put the links in there, so don't send me email or say, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. The links are right there. The truth of the matter is, this article in Weekly Standard is interesting. It's called Obama's Regulatory Rampage. Fasten your seatbelts because the courts and Congress won't be able to slow it down much. You see, that statement in and of itself tells you what you need to know about the danger of where we are. This is supposed to be a republic. Not a banana republic with a K at the end of it, but a republic. Here's what, this is the president's own words. Where Congress is not willing to act, we're going to go ahead and do it ourselves. Excuse me, that sounds just like it's right out of the mouth of a Mussolini or a Pol Pot or a Mao or one of the Kremlin members. Who do you think you are? The truth is, his second term is an absolute unmitigated disaster. And so now, in an effort to save it, he's going to sit there and institute executive orders that, granted, can be withdrawn by another president in the future. But that's assuming, for argument's sake, that the House doesn't capitulate and allow 25 million brand new voters to make sure that the tide is forever changed against anyone with a conservative ideal. A constitutionally conservative ideal. Not this rhino conservative that John McCain and his ilk want, but real, true conservative ideals that are based and founded on the Constitution. I'll tell you what. Congress needs to act. And Congress needs to act to withdraw the capability and the wherewithal for this president to continue to act this way. The truth is, if they're not going to step up to the plate and do the right thing by us, the American people, then in line with our Declaration of Independence, they have to go as well. I hear, and I see people say, oh, you can't talk like that. Yes, we can. You see, that's exactly the point. This is our nation. It is not Barack Obama's nation. It is not the nation of John Boehner. It is not the nation of Harry Reid. It is not the nation of Nancy Pelosi or Graham or Hillary Clinton. This nation belongs to the American people. And we are the best arbiters of our own final destiny. I've had enough of it. And meanwhile, they're bungling every other aspect of this administration's tenure. Look at our international policy. It is an absolute atrocious mess. I mean, as foreign policy goes, if you look at the room of foreign policy, it looks like about 10 frags were thrown in there and somebody slammed the door. Everyone is against us, and in large part because of the absolutely ridiculous positions that this nation has taken. I resent it. And I resent the fact that because of his mistakes, we're all going to pay. You see, the mistakes he makes don't just affect Barack Obama and the 5,000 people in this administration. They affect 315 million Americans. And that's not a true representative government when the government is going out and doing their own thing and determining what our future is going to be without even questioning what our needs and desires might be. There was an excellent article you should go check out. It's on our Facebook page and it's up on our website at americasvoicenow.org. It says, Why the World Hates Obama from Front Page Magazine. And I got to tell you, it's pretty accurate. The accuracy of the claims in that article are just and legitimate. All right, we're going to take a break. We're up against a hard break here. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to tackle our second topic, which is Iranian sanctions were lifted in advance of these negotiations that are going on now with Iran, and everybody's in an uproar about it. Not just Israel, although admittedly, they're the ones who would probably stand to be, the most injured or the most immediately injured. But in addition to that, there are plenty of other nations, and everyone's coming out saying, what are you doing? All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host here. You can find us on the web by visiting us at americasvoicenow.org. You can find our Facebook page there at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. If you're a member of Facebook, please like it. If you're not a member of Facebook, because that helps us to spread our message within your circle of influence and for you to do the same. If you're not a member of Facebook, fear not. You can still go there and read the articles and find out what we have to say about things. You can read our comments and comments of our listenership. And then also, we post everything up to YouTube, where we have not only a video, but also an audio stream. And on our website, we also have the ability for you to capture the audio, if audio only. We've been recording it in podcast for you, especially for those folks who want to just download it and then listen to it at their leisure on a mobile phone, what have you. So, all right, you're listening to America's Voice. We'll be back in just a moment. My name is Michael Evans. Stick with us. We'll be right back.